Israeli warplanes struck Damascus last week, targeting Syria's defense ministry. The attack came in response to growing sectarian violence in southern Syria, where hundreds have been killed in clashes between the country's Druze minority and forces loyal to Syria's new president, former militant Islamist Ahmad al-Shara. The violence highlights a growing divide between the U.S. and Israel over what a post-Assad Syria should look like. I'm joined by the Atlantic writer Robert Wórths, who has covered Syria extensively. Welcome, Robert. Tell me first, what does Syria look like today? You've been covering it for so many years. What is the state of play right now?
Well, Syria is really a devastated country, and that's the first thing you see when you arrive there. You know, it went through more than a decade of ruinous civil war. And even before that, it was a country that was a dictatorship, that was under sanctions, that was economically just pulverized. And so what you have now is a country that much of the country is still in a kind of giddy shock after the fall of the Assad dictatorship last December. Many of the Sunni majority feel liberated because, after all, the Assads were from the Alawite minority and the Sunnis were largely the victims of his oppression. But you also have a country that remains, as I said, pulverized, and you have a state of extreme uneasiness among the country's minority communities, the Druze, the Christians, the Alawites, and others.
So let's get to this big disagreement. I mean, there's an Axios article in which a White House official speaks of Bibi Netanyahu in an incredibly intemperate way. It talks about how Netanyahu just wants to bomb everything that moves. So explain to us first, what is the American position on the new Syria?
The American position is fundamentally this. After Assad fell, Trump made clear that he thought Syria was a basket case, Syria was a dangerous place. He wanted to stay out. But that changed dramatically in May because Trump went to the Gulf, and there he met with the leaders of the Gulf states and with Erdogan, the president of Turkey. And all those countries have a very clear position. They want Syria to have a strong central government. They do not want it to be divided up. They do not want the minorities in that country to pose a threat, because those countries, the Gulf countries and Turkey, have their own minorities. They do not want an example set of restive, threatening minorities. So they pitched this to Trump and said, look, we want you to embrace Shara, the new president of Syria. And Trump accepted this. He also met the new Syrian president, who came to Riyadh to meet him. And Trump seems to have been very impressed. He said afterwards, he's an attractive guy, he's a tough guy. He said he's got a strong past, which was sort of an oblique way of acknowledging that he used to be the leader of al-Qaeda in Syria.
Now, the Israeli position is very different and seems to stem from a growing sense of Israeli strength and a desire to, take no chances when preserving its security.
Absolutely. I think the Israelis have always had this sense that they are more secure when their Arab neighbors are weak and divided. And I think you see that reflected in their current view. They were, on the one hand, very pleased to be rid of Bashar al-Assad, who was an ally of Iran, Israel's greatest enemy. By vanquishing Assad, al-Shara and his forces really kicked Iran out of Syria. However, the Israelis are extremely uneasy about Shara, this former jihadist. They do not trust him. And so what they have been doing is acting in a very tough way, very unilaterally ever since December, bombing weapons caches, bombing anything that might pose a threat.
This feels to me, Robert, like a situation where you're seeing a new geopolitical dynamic play out, which is a very powerful Israel that has a kind of take no prisoners approach and is going to do whatever it wants to protect its security, whether it's in Iran, whether it's in Syria, whether it's with Hezbollah, and a growing sense of unease among some of the Arab states and Turkey about this. And you're seeing this division between the interests of Israel and the interests of the moderate Arab states, not for the first time, but in a kind of new way.
I think that's absolutely right. There's a dramatic sense that, as you said, Israel feels more empowered. Israel is willing to take greater risks and incur greater loss of life. But Turkey, which is the most influential power in the new Syria, because for years, when Shara was cooped up in the far northwest corner over the past decade, Idlib is the name of the province, its patron, the patron of Shara and of that rebel corner of Syria, was the Turks. The Turks provided everything, intelligence, communications, everything that was needed. And I think especially now that Iran is very much on the back foot, Turkey feels this is our moment. We can become the most important player in this region.
And what is your take on al-Shara himself?
You know, Shara is a fascinating figure, and I think many people feel they still haven't quite got him figured out. His moderation is not entirely new. When he was the leader of this province of Idlib that I mentioned over the past decade, he moderated gradually. That province was a very dangerous place, even for many Syrians. And he took things down a notch. He insisted that everybody fall under his authority. He began to make sort of the semblance of a national army there. He became a much more pragmatic figure, and has continued to be so. And in fact, since he came to power in Syria in December, it's been striking to see, the ideology of most jihadist groups is profoundly anti-Israel. And he has made clear signs that he's willing to talk to Israel.
Robert Worth, always a pleasure to talk to you. You're so smart about all this. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.